Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Second Age of Reason, and we're going to have another episode of Cooking with Chris. And again, it's from our favorite family cookbook, Better Homes and Gardens, which we've had in the family for decades. And the recipe we're going to do today is called Beef Stroganof. It's in here, and it's so good and been used so much. There's all kinds of leftover sour cream and wine and mushroom juice, and you know it's been a well-used recipe when the cookbook is just full of it. And so we're going to show you how to make some really good beef stroganoff, because the recipe in here is mighty fine. So we'll take you right through it step by step. And here we go. So let's move on and look at the main ingredients to make beef stroganoff. Over here, the secret ingredient, of course, is cooking sherry, noodles that you put the stroganoff over, sour cream that will be going with the sherry, mushrooms that are also going with the sour cream and the sherry, beef for the beef stroganoff. This looks like a steak, really good, and garlic powder in a modest amount, and a little bit of salt. We're not going to use the bouillon cube the recipe calls for because it has too much MSG. We're going to use something a little bit less. We're just going to use the juice from the mushrooms. So that'll be in place of the bouillon. So now let's get on, and the first step will be to boil up the noodles. Now the noodles are done cooking. We're making them just a little bit softer so they don't absorb so much of the liquid. If you make them al dente, a little bit drier, they're going to soak up a lot of the liquid and juice from the stroganoff. And I don't know, but we like to have it a little more juicy and saucy. So I'm going to just put them in here, and they'll wait for the rest of it. And then we'll come back to that when we prepare the stroganoff, but at least this part is done. Another part of the recipe now, beginning, calls for us to take the meat, the beef for the beef stroganoff, and we're going to have to cut it in little bitty pieces, really small chewable ones, and then we're going to be frying them with a little bit of cooking oil. This is 3 tablespoons of cooking oil to brown it. And that's how far we can get with this one. So I'm going to start cutting this, and we'll show you what the end result is like when it gets into the pan with the oil. And now that the meat is all chopped up small, as you can see, little chunks, they'll shrink a little bit too. They're bite-sized chunks. They go into the frying pan with the oil. And the next step says to brown them. But we also just add a little bit of garlic. It calls for like a 4/4 teaspoon of garlic to help the flavor a little bit. And boy, does it smell good. Now just move it over to the stove. And it gets browned in there. Now, while the steak is cooking, we're going to brown it, and once it's brown, it has to come out so we can cook with the rest of it. In the meantime, I've taken the liberty of opening the mushrooms, and it calls for beef broth, but that's got a lot of MSG, so I'm just going to use the mushroom juice, which is a little less MSG, if any. Needs a 1/4 cup. We'll use that for our beef broth. The other part of the liquid that we cook at the next step also requires a 1/2 cup of cooking sherry. We just add some in there. So now it's about 3/4 of a cup, with 1/2 cup cooking sherry and a 1/4 cup of the mushroom sauce. Now the meat is browned, and we have to remove the meat from the pan so we can do the mushroom section next. So here comes the meat out of the pan, nicely browned. But I leave the juices in because that's part of the plan of flavor mixing. See? And now that the meat is all out, the next step says add the mushrooms. And we let those simmer for about 2 to 3 minutes. And that's how the flavor gets into the sauce. Now that the mushrooms are done, we have to remove them the same way and put them with the meat. At this point now, we make it more juicy by adding the wine sauce and with the mushroom juice. And we're supposed to get it to boiling, and it boils out the alcohol, which takes a few minutes. It says get it down to where it's about 1/3 of a cup of liquid. That kind of concentrates the flavor as well. Now, in the meantime, while that's going, we need to get 1 cup of sour cream. Here's the sour cream. Now, many minutes have passed, and the sauce has been reduced to quite a bit less. We're aiming for like 1/3 of a cup, and it's pretty close to there now. So the final steps are these, and now watch carefully. I have the mixture of meat and mushrooms here, which I will add to the sauce. Stir them in so they soak it in and get that flavor. It also calls at this time for a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now I modified the recipe, I'm sorry. But this is one little feature that seems to help it just a wee tad. This is optional, you don't have to do this, but I'm adding an extra teaspoon of sugar. You don't have to do that. I'm just doing it because that's personal preference. And lastly, we have sour cream, a cup of sour cream, which we will mix in. And lower the temperature because we don't want to burn it. Now, what you can do, they recommend you just pour this over noodles. Or you can add the noodles to it and just stir it all up. It depends what you personally prefer. But as you can see now, it's getting really nice and creamy at this point. Look at the texture, it's really nice. And I didn't even have to use any cream of mushroom soup. It's got real sour cream, real wine, real garlic, steak, and mushrooms. This will serve about 3 or 4 people, generous portions. So there it is, mushroom stroganoff, or beef stroganoff. And we can just throw the noodles in with it to get the flavor all on it. And if it seems too dry, we can always add a little more wine sauce or sour cream. But we've got the basic flavor down pat now. Yeah, this could serve 4 people easy. Although it's one of those dishes that is so good when the people eat it, they can't stop, even if they're full. So you've got to bear that in mind when you make something like this. This particular recipe in that particular book is outstanding. And now, I'll just try just a little bit here. And let's see how it is. Perfect. It is fantastic. Beef Stroganof. And that's how you make it. Until later, we'll be seeing ya.